We have a little bit of a misconception going on in at least the society around me that I see in my friends and in my family and generally in the people around me. And it is that all of us need to first in our lives solve for stability and predictability and financial safety. I think that's largely what drives the fact that we are educating ourselves more and more. We are finding steady jobs, that society is not really designed for the self-employed person. Like it's difficult to get a bank loan. It's difficult. A lot of things are difficult when you are self-employed and you don't have a normal job because it's considered risky. And it may in many ways also be that, but I think that most people just consider risk a sort of in a way that's not really as nuanced as the real world is. And I think one of the realizations that I have had in the past couple of years, maybe even further back than that, is that while it's really nice to have financial stability and to have a predictable near future and to live by society's norms and standards, I actually think that it's not really the safe path, because the safe path, it matters more where your destination is. Like, what is a good life to you? What is it that you're optimizing for? That is what should be determining what the safe and dangerous and risky paths are, right? I think that most people today, they forget to look at where they want to go, and they just buy the story of optimizing for safety, for predictability, for financial stability throughout your entire life. That's kind of the goal, right? Or at least it becomes the goal if you don't have a clear path towards where you're going. I've not always had a path, but I know for certain that my end destination is not going to be just a completely steady, regular life where I'm doing 9 to 5 and I can afford maybe 1 or 2 vacations a year. We have to really keep an eye on our finances, all this. That's not my dream life. That might be stability, but it's definitely not what I want to. What is that? No idea what that sound just was. Anyway, it may be the ice truck. I don't know. Yes, it's the ice truck. Cool. I didn't know that they were coming up here. What I'm saying is that if you just operate by the assumption that stability and financial predictability is what life is about, or at least that's the first and main priority, then it's also quite predictable where your life is going to end up, and it's going to end up the same place as everyone else, in the hamster wheel, 9 to 5, competing to buy a bigger house, get the nicer car, have your kids in the right institution, all these things. It feels like that's just the motion that most people go through. And I think it's coming from probably a good place when this is what most parents want for their kids and what they kind of nudge them towards. But I think it misses the entire point of life, which is to find your own path, to figure out what it is that you want, how you want to contribute to the world, and how you want to make your life unique. So just for me, thinking about optimizing that way just seems completely like it's missing the point. And then another thing that I think most people don't really think about is that if you live life this way, you have to have a really good reason for optimizing for safety and predictability, right? Like, you need to gain something by doing that. If you already have it, what is it worth? And what I mean by that is, I was very fortunate, for example, to be born into a really good family where my parents came from something that was a lot less nice and glamorous than what I grew up in. It's not that we're rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we've always had food on the table. We've always had a nice house to live in. We've always had vacations, and I've always been able to get help from my parents, and they have worked really hard for me to have that type of freedom and stability and predictability. They didn't have it, so they worked really hard to create it for them and for us, that makes sense, total sense, and it's something I'm eternally grateful for because it has made my life really good. But then now I'm looking from the perspective of a young man who grew up with stability and safety, whose worst case often is having to move home to his parents again, into my childhood bedroom, which is largely still there, with parents that I love and that I definitely can live with for some period of time, who would do anything for me. And that's my worst case. Maybe if you add on to that, my worst case would be taking a job at my dad's or some other manual labor job. Like, I think my worst case is probably a dream scenario for so many people in this world. And I think that's just, it's profound to me that so many people that share my kind of foundation, let's call it, that so many people in the same shoes as mine, they choose to go out and try to build exactly what they already have, which is stability and predictability. It may not be stability in the sense that I know exactly how much I'm going to earn next month. I know exactly how much I can save up over the next 10 years. And I know how much my assets are going to grow. And I know that, like, I don't have that type of stability or predictability, but that's also in the very short term, right? If you zoom it out, the stability and predictability I have is that I always have somewhere to sleep. I always have someone who's willing to put food on the table for me if I can't provide it. I'm not going to be homeless. I have people who will help me find an entry-level job if that's needed. Like, that's all the stability and predictability I need, right? Just to know that I'm not going to end up on the street if everything goes wrong. That's more than enough predictability and stability for me. And I feel like this is what my parents, they sacrificed a lot to build me, right? To give me. They gave me opportunity. They gave me a life where I didn't have to spend my bandwidth thinking about, like, what if this goes wrong? Will I be able to make it? Will it have fatal consequences? And I know that I'm still in a stage in life where I don't have kids, and that's definitely going to change a lot. So take this for my situation. And if you're in a similar situation, then you can consider making it advice. But just being so fortunate to have been dealt a hand that is really strong, and then so many people choose not to play it well and not to go for the full ride. They then play small and go for the safe options, the predictable options, instead of recognizing and acknowledging that they have been put on a platform from where they can leap so much higher than what their parents was able to. But instead they're kind of like aiming in the same span of where they already kind of are. And I think that's not only just really unambitious, it's also, I think, a straight up disrespect to your parents, even though they may completely agree with where you are. But I think it's disrespectful to not use the opportunity that they gave you. Because when they're giving you advice and they're helping you figure out where to go, they're giving you their advice from their point of view. And they still have those needs of safety and stability because they grew up probably without it. So they're still thinking with a brain that's wired for that. But you were born with a brain that's not, because you already had it, right? So you have to figure out what is it that you want to go out and do with that, instead of just adopting the same mental framework and the same worldview as your parents have and aim for the same things as they already achieved, right? You should want to figure out, how do I use what I have to get to the next stage so that my kids can then maybe get to the next stage. I think that's the only respectful way of kind of handling whatever you were dealt. Also, whether that was not as fortunate as the hand I've been dealt, or more fortunate, like whatever it is, you should figure out, like, how do you take it to the next level, I think. And we just don't really have a society that honors that or respects it or rewards it, at least not in the beginning, in the short term. And that is at least something that I feel is a shame, because we keep thinking that we need safety and stability when we already have it. And then it's just doing more of the same of what we already have, instead of using that to figure out what more we want to get. And if you genuinely don't want anything more, that's also completely fine. You don't have to, but at least I know that's the case for me. But I still have parents who would rather have seen me take a university degree, would rather have seen me have a steady income, maybe even a normal job, at least some kind of safety net, without them realizing that they built the safety net. I was born with it. I don't have to create it myself. And that's not being spoiled or a brat, or that's just being straight up grateful for the gift that you were born with and now go do something with it, instead of taking yourself back to a step that you're not at and then building what you already have. And I think just on the note of like getting back to where it started with having this idea of where is it you want to go, and that being the predictor of what is safe and what is not. For me, I think it's very clear that I don't want to go the same route as everyone else. I want to live my life. I want to do whatever feels like me in the moment. Of course, I'm willing to commit and I'm willing to stay with things. But if something doesn't feel right anymore, like marketing consulting didn't feel right anymore, then I want to be brave enough to listen to that and then find my own path. And I think recognizing that also means that if I went the university route and I got a 9-to-5, then that is the most sure way for me to never get what it is that I want out of life. And that to me feels like more of a risk than the potential financial risk that is doing what I'm doing. And I've been able to put food on the table every single month. I've been able to pay my rent every month as well. I haven't been homeless yet. Like, it's not that it's impossible to live this way, or that you wake up every month thinking like, oh shit, how am I going to survive? How am I going to make money? Like, you find solutions. And fooling yourself into thinking that having a 9-to-5 job is safety, that's only because we've defined it as safety. But you have a boss that could fire you tomorrow. What would you do then? You could be in an industry where you have a recession in a month, where 30% of the staff is laid off in every company in your industry and there's no work. You could come out of university and spend 2 years trying to find a job. Like, I've seen that. Fuck calling that safety. That's not safety. I think the most safe and reasonable thing you could do if you wanted safety and predictability is actually learning the skills it takes to generate your own income, to be independent of others, to just know that whatever situation you're in, you're going to be able to learn what it takes to kind of sort out your situation. I feel like that's the most beneficial thing you could do for yourself if you wanted to feel safe and if you wanted predictability and stability, because then you kind of remove the stability inducing factor from being the, let's call it the outcome, right? How much money is on the table every day or every month. And then you move that to being the input instead, being the knowledge that you know you can handle it and you'll find a solution even though you don't even know what the problem is yet. You have that confidence. I feel like that's much more stability and predictability than banking on an employer who's going to keep feeding you work and an industry that's going to keep being in growth and basically just relying on someone else to keep you safe and stable. I think that's the opposite of stability in my world. And it's the opposite of safety as well, unless it really strongly correlates with exactly what you want out of life. In that case, you're just fine. I just honestly don't think that that's the truth for most people. And I think if you're telling yourself that it is the truth, but you're not 100% sure that you're living your dream life, then I think you'd probably find after reflecting a bit that you're lying a little bit to yourself, like most of us are most of the time. And that's fair. And that's completely normal. But you can choose to not lie to yourself about this particular thing anymore and instead figure out what is it actually that you want. What are the things that you don't want to regret when you're about to leave here? One thing I really got some kind of clarity from was quite a lot of years ago that I came across let's call it an exercise that someone shared, where the whole idea was to write your own, what do you call that in English? Eulogy? Like the speech that someone holds for you after you die. Like find 2 or 3 or 4 people and then write their speeches for you? What is it that you want them to tell about you when you're gone? Those are the things that matter. Those are the things that make you you. Those are your values. Those are what you want to be remembered for. If you can figure that out and be pretty clear about what those things are, I think you'll be pretty surprised that it's not your job, it's not your income, it's not your ability to be stable, it's all the other things. It's the amazing stories, it's the fun things you did, it's your quirks, it's your just like ability to care about other people, it's the way you listen, it's all those things, and if that's what matters in the end, then figure out how you can make those things the things that matter now as well, instead of all the other things that we just keep constantly thinking are the most important things. Because I think they rarely are important, but I think we're good at making them the most important. So this could be a little advice from here to figure out what's important for you, and then try and challenge your perspective on safety and predictability, and instead try and answer those questions of what that means to you from the point of view of what will get you towards what it is that you want out of life. What is the most safe way to achieve that? What is the biggest risk in not doing that? I think those are the more important questions. Now I'm going to jump into my dinner. Have a lovely time. Take care. All the best. Bye.